So it's May 24th, 2009.
Yeah, it
Right.
is. Yeah,
It
May
is.
24th.
It is. All right. So it's Ida and Tory. And Ida and I had the pleasure of meeting each other because how did we first meet?
I can't remember. Was it at a picket?
No, it was in Clearwater, Florida.
Oh,
Remember
that's
because
right.
of the chair. We sat in the red chair. We
Yes,
picketed
we did. We
and
picketed, sat in the red chair.
she was so great. I was like, we're picketing, and I just got her camera and everything, and they had their injunction where we couldn't
Yeah,
walk down, we couldn't
yeah,
block the doors,
that's
and they
right.
had a red Santa's chair in front of these bushes in front of a door, and I said to Ida, "You want a picture?" And she said, "Yeah, sure." And she sat down, took the picture. She said, "You want a picture?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And I sat down afterward.
That's
Lights,
right.
camera, you're under arrest. It
Yeah,
was
it was really kind of
crazy. But
funny.
that's how we met. We
Yeah,
still both have the picture of us in our red Santa's chairs.
yeah. I
But it
think
was the
my.
beginning of a good friendship.
Yeah, it was. It was. That was an interesting trip too. I think I took Keith down there
Yeah,
that time, didn't
yeah,
I? Yeah,
yeah,
it
yeah. And there were
was.
a lot of critics there then.
Yeah,
That
there
was in
were.
2000,
Well, and I think Arnie came from.
right? Arnie was there.
Arnie was there, and oh God, there were a lot of
Tons. Yeah, a lot of old time
old
critics.
timers there.
Yeah, it was really fun. But Ida, you originally got into this because of your son, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I read an ad that the Cramptons had put in about the dangers of cults or whatever it was, and I answered it. And I said, "Do you look at Scientology as a cult, or am I just a doting mother?"
That's a good question.
And she wrote back and she said, "You're not a doting mother. It is a cult. If you'd like to talk about it, come see us." So I flew down from San Francisco and she met me at the airport. And from then on, we were fast friends.
I bet.
And she was such a worker. Her and her husband were probably the hardest workers of anybody I ever knew to expose not just Scientology, but they had a daughter who had joined the Love Family, which was a real nasty group. And they worked hard and long to get her out of that outfit. So then they did such a good job of it that everybody was coming to them. I'd go down and spend a week with them, and you couldn't believe the number of people that came for help to the
I
Cramptons. They were
I
two
did
great
believe that.
people, and they never turned anybody away. I don't know how many dinners she quick fixed for some kid that come that hadn't eaten for a week, and they were in some group and couldn't show up with any money, and the group wouldn't have anything to do with them, so they'd come to her for help.
And back
So
then, like now, people can type in the internet. We're also used to the Google, and you can type in Scientology, and their stuff comes up. But the second stuff that comes up is critical information, right?
yeah,
But back then, there was nothing,
we didn't
right?
have anything, and you really didn't dare stick your nose out too far because they would come after you.
Right.
And really,
And sue you, right?
it wasn't just that. I mean, they did a lot of dirty tricks. I can't even count the dirty tricks that were pulled on me by
Like the
sign.
fair game
Oh,
stuff.
you better know it. I used to have, when I moved here, there used to be people come here and picket in front of my house.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Scientologists?
When I first moved here, I don't know anybody else who would. And then Muriel Dufresne from over at the cult, she came and went to all the neighbors and told them I was housing a killer. Keith Hansen was staying here
A
with me
killer.
and picketing. And she
Okay.
come and she went to all the neighbors, and they said they didn't think I'd have anybody in their house that was a killer. Well, believe me, she's got one. And then they'd show a distorted picture of Keith to where he looked just like a absolute gangster. And they made the trip around here, and if I hadn't had good neighbors, they probably would have said, "This woman's got to go."
Right, exactly.
But that was their intention, that
But
was their.
but back then, pretty much wasn't it like you wrote letters, right,
Oh
to
yeah.
congressmen and things like that?
When my son first got involved, I couldn't. I used to keep a record I don't know if I even have it anymore. But I wrote to congressmen, I wrote to senators, I wrote to governors and mayors.
Didn't you were in touch with the guy that went down to Jonestown? What was
Oh,
his name?
yeah. Oh, it was
Um,
Leo Ryan.
Leo J.
Well,
Ryan.
how I met Leo was I never actually met him in person, but I knew his sister.
But he wrote to you, right?
Oh, yeah. His sister, uh, she went to a Cult Awareness Network meeting, and that's where I met her. And her son, who was going to a Jesuit school, I mean, he was going to a Catholic school, and one of them there told him that he should look into Scientology. So he got all wrapped up in Scientology right off of the bat. And this really shook her up. So
Sure.
she, when she's back east, she talks to Leo about it. And she said, Leo, you should look into some of this. And I met her at one of the cult awareness meetings and started a conversation through letters with her. And she said, you should write to my brother. So I wrote to Leo, and I happened to be in his district because I was living up near San Francisco then. And he wrote right back. And we had a meeting as soon as he got back from Jonestown. He was coming back up in his area to do some speeches, and he wanted to see Patty Hearst because she was in his district. And he was going to stop, and we were going to go have lunch. And then when he was killed, I was absolutely devastated.
I bet.
In fact, I went to a psychiatrist afterwards. I couldn't deal with it. I just
Right.
couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. And finally, my husband said, Ida, you got to do something. You can't sit around like this. He said, you're going to get sick. I said, I think I'm already sick. So I went to this guy. He was super guy. And I guess I went to him 2 or 3 times. His name was Dr. Kansky. He was sharper than a tack. And actually, we kind of become friends through all of the conversation. Sure. He was a good psychiatrist. But anyway, he told me, or he taught me, how to deal with the loss of a child. And when a kid goes in Scientology, you've lost them. And I just couldn't come to terms with losing this kid. I had when I was young. I was 19, I think, when he was born, or 18. And we always were so close. We had such a good relationship, especially after his father died. And he helped with his brother, and, it was a real good relationship. And then all of a sudden, this is over. You either kiss Scientology or you're done. And I couldn't do that. To me, it was the most evil outfit I ever saw in my life. All I could read about was that it broke up families. It didn't keep families together like religion is supposed to do. It broke them up.
It's true.
I went after everybody I could.
And there's a lot of other families who've been broken up also.
Oh, yeah. There were just so many. And the more that I'd go to these cult awareness meetings, the one up in San Francisco was a little bit sophisticated. If you didn't have a Mooney in the family, they didn't really pay much attention. Oh, I don't think Scientology's really a cult. I said, then have a kid join one and you'll find out.
Yeah.
There were 2 or 3 lawyers there that had lost kids to the Moonies, and you'd have thought that was the only cult in the whole damn country. And here was people losing to Krishnas and God only knows who all.
Right.
The Love family, there was a half a dozen other ones. So I didn't fit in with that group very good. That's where I met Ford Green's mother, and she was the best one in the whole group, to listen at least. And they just thought the Moonies were the only one that was ever bothering anybody.
Right.
So, and then one man, he had the guts to say, well, prove to me Scientology is a cult. I said, have your kid join. Then you'll know.
Yeah.
That's all I could say. How are you going to prove somebody's a Scientology? In Scientology,
Or that it's
you just
cult-like.
can't.
Or it's a mind
Yeah,
control thing.
you
Yeah.
can't even do it. Of course, that was, remember, back in the 70s when there wasn't anything written on the internet.
Yeah, there wasn't any
Nothing. There
coordinated thing
wasn't.
at all.
No, there wasn't anywhere you could go for any information, especially any anti-information, because everybody was afraid of these bastards.
Right. And I remember being they would faction off anybody that was against them. You know what I mean? So it's sort of
Oh,
like, oh,
yeah.
this is Ida and this is
Yeah.
Jerry and they're just this and they're just
Yeah.
that and David Mayo and but
Well,
when you were from the inside, you were kind of thinking like Mayo really helped me.
yeah,
And so even though he was out, I refused to go against him
yeah,
because he helped me.
yeah,
And so it was weird. I'm in and
yeah,
they're against him and I'm not. And it's
yeah.
very strange. It's a very strange thing. And I know now people are in and they're waking up.
Well, it's I can understand someone getting involved in something, and especially when they had such a good method of indoctrinating you, and then the method of keeping you.
Right.
This was I can see young and not they didn't pick up the crop off the street. They got the good guys. They got people that were intelligent. They got people that were good, that would contribute to society.
Right.
And these are the ones that they got a hold of. And that's what really bugged me worse than anything, because they didn't go down on Skid Row and pick up people that needed help. They got the kids that were really prime people, that were good students and would contribute to society. Be mayors, be governors. I mean, these people that they got and screwed up their lives would have been somebody.
Could have been somebody.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Ronnie was very honest, and
Your son.
yeah, he was just a real good kid. And my other son was one you had to go to school with to shape him up every now and then. But Ronnie never had any of those problems. He was a prize student, got very good grades, and he loved to read. But he was a believer, and when they got a hold of him, he became a real believer. Broke up his marriage.
Did he ever write a disconnection letter to you?
Yeah, yeah,
Really?
I got one of those. I don't know where it is. I think it's on the internet.
And don't you think it's ridiculous the way they say that's the same as shunning?
Well, it isn't. It's worse than
It's
shunning.
worse than shunning.
I think of course, I have no use for the Jehovah's that shun their families either.
Right. No, I
I
agree.
just really, when they come here, they get a speech. I invite them in, ask them to sit down, then I lay them low. Because I really
You're the
do.
best at that too.
Well, I
You
really do. I make them first. I say, if you don't salute the flag, I can't talk to you. Well, we don't really believe in saluting. I said, well, come in, sit down, and I'll tell you why you ought to salute the flag. They don't come here anymore. They got my house marked, and they won't come here anymore at all. I always got a kick out of talking to them. It just was kind of broke up the day. Really, it can get pretty boring when you live alone, And then some kind of people, they know I'm involved in all this crap, and they kind of look at you with a funny eye. Oh, you know her. So, but I like it here. I got awful good neighbors. And
when did you get on the internet and start meeting more people?
oh, I can't even remember. It's been a long. The minute I could, I did.
Do you think it was in the 90s or 2000? Probably in 2000.
Oh, I guess it was. It was when I first got the computer.
Right.
That's when I started looking into the
And you were on ARS, I remember.
Yeah.
Posting. And then you
of course,
I met a ton of people from there.
I wrote letters. I kept copies of them. I may even have them stowed away somewhere. But I wrote to senators and governors and mayors and everybody I could find. If their name was in the paper, man, they got a letter from me,
And
whether
you know
they
what? That
wanted
is
it or
still
not.
great to this day. If people out there that are going, what can I do to help? That what Ida has done
Oh,
is
they could.
great to this day.
Oh,
Letters, I think they in Washington they consider one letter is equal to 100 people.
well, I write. I still write once in a while, not as often as I should. But the ones that gets me, that just shut the door and say, "Oh, it's all right, it'll go away." This outfit's never going to go away.
Yeah.
You know, they got enough people where they're not going to go away. And when they get a hold of a guy like Cruz, who's really a nice guy, and they get a hold of him and use him, here's all these young star-struck kids
Right.
over Tom Cruise. Well, that's better than getting 25 people like you or me.
Mm.
Because Cruz talks. He talks to the young people and they have no clue what he's involved in.
Right.
None. And who would think this guy was some dummy to get involved?
I was at the Flag Land Base before they did this event. He was in Scientology, but under the radar, like no one was supposed to know or
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah.
We were not supposed to mention his name. And then they had a big event. He came out. He said, "I'm Tom Cruise. I've gotten trained as an auditor. You should get trained. Everyone
Yeah.
there, now you all should."
Yeah.
And that's when he became. And we were in, and we all left and went. Somebody handled him,
Yeah.
right?
Somebody got a hold
And
of him.
he's never been the same
Well,
since.
it's too bad because I haven't even a clue how many young people he would have encouraged. But he didn't discourage anybody, and that's
Right.
the sad part. I mean,
Yeah, they need to look at both sides. That's the
yeah,
thing. And
yeah,
that's the great thing about the internet and even what you've started and all the people with you and before you. There's tons of people that
yeah.
the people on the internet don't even know about
Oh,
that
yeah.
are real troopers. I mean, because those old days were hardcore. You had to be really courageous, I think,
Well,
to
it's not
take
only
a
that,
stand.
they come after you.
That's
And
what I mean.
they wrote letters when I was up in Sunnyvale and I was writing about them. I wrote to the city council when they had these meetings, and I'm seeing these suckers are getting bought by this outfit. And
Right.
I'd write letters to them, and they picketed my house where I lived in a big mobile place just like this. My husband was transferred to San Francisco, and we knew he was going to retire within about 5 years, so we didn't want to buy a house.
Right.
So we bought a mobile, and in a great big park there. It was it was interesting, a nice place, and met a lot of nice people. But, well, they started writing letters to all my neighbors there because I was working them then just as much as now.
Right.
And, well, I started in on the minute I found out who they were. And when my son went in, and it ended up breaking up his family, and he had a beautiful wife, two nice children. They had everything in the world going for him. He had a remarkably good business. She was a systems analyst working. The kids were healthy. And this just shut the whole thing because she
She didn't
wouldn't
want to
join.
go in, right?
Oh, she wasn't going to join. She said, I went down there and looked around at those people. She said, they got goofy eyes. She says, I'm not going. She says, there's no way. Well, when you're hypnotized, your eyes do get kind of goofy.
Some of those do for sure.
I got hypnotized one time, and I come home and I looked in the mirror and I thought, what the hell happened to my eyes?
Really?
Oh, they looked like two pea holes in the snow. They were just glaring.
Wow.
And I just really, I got hypnotized to quit smoking. Didn't work. It worked for about 10 days. And I would have killed for a cigarette after those 10 days. But I finally quit that too. But, you get old, you got to quit everything. So, but anyway, it just, actually, I often sit now and I wonder, what the hell would I done with my life if my son hadn't joined Scientology? I never was somebody to join a women's group because they really irritate me.
Right.
I tried several times, but all they do is sit about clothes and hats and hairdos, and I left that stuff a long time ago. That's stuff you should do when you're young.
Yeah, I agree.
So I was done with all that. So I just I couldn't handle the women's clubs. But one thing the son gave me was something to think about. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. And do something about it.
Well, I couldn't. My dad would have just turned over in his grave if I'd have just sat around and not tried
Right.
to do something.
You know, I feel the same about my father.
Yeah,
You know, my father passed away when I was 22.
yeah,
And then when I started to wake up, I could feel him there. You know,
Yeah.
it was that courage that he gave me as a little kid. And it was like, come on,
Yeah.
do something.
Well, my dad said to me one time, when you look at something and you look it over real good and well, it's damn dead wrong. And he said, you sit on your fanny and you don't try to do something about it. He said, now that's what I call a sin. So I thought, well, I've done enough bad sins in my life. I better not add one more. And that's really 90% of what he was telling me.
Totally.
And of course, he died long before Ronnie got involved in this. I can't even imagine what he would have done because he just really was a fighter and he would have just.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to have our fathers meet. Like my
Yeah.
father kind of said the same thing. Because I grew up with my two older brothers,
Yeah.
and there were always some bullies around. And my dad said, "Look, here's the deal. Bottom line, if people sit down at the table with you, it doesn't matter whether they're with you or against you, as long as they're willing to talk or even argue. As long as they're willing to sit down at the table, that's okay. The only people to watch out for are the bullies because they will never sit down at the table
Oh,
with you
yeah.
and talk."
Oh, he's a
And I
sharp
thought
guy.
about OSA because I was working with them at the time, and I thought these guys will never sit down at the table and
And
talk
talk with anybody.
with anybody.
Yeah.
And was a big part of my waking up was like thinking about my dad and thinking about these people won't sit down and
Yeah.
talk at all.
Well, I think the angriest I ever got in my life was when Muriel Dufresne,
She called my neighbor, by the way. That
Who's-
was the one.
who's the wheel,
The
over there
PR over there. Yeah.
at the cult at Golden Era. I mean, she's the queen of all queens over there. And that witch, she comes by and dropped all this crap off to all my neighbors. Every single one of them but one brought them to me. I had a stack of stuff like this.
I did too. They did the same to
Did she
me.
come to my all around the neighborhood? All these old people that don't even know what the hell she's talking about. I was housing a killer because Keith was here. That was one of her.
And doesn't she look
things she
dangerous?
And Keith wouldn't hurt a flea if he dropped.
I know, Keith too. Oh God. When I
So
heard that.
anyway, it was. It's been interesting. Only one old lady come and talk to me about it. She says, you have to do something. We don't want this in our neighborhood. I said, then you'll probably have to move because I'm not going anywhere. And that shut her up real quick. She never came back.
Well, I know, Ida, a ton of people would like to tell you thank you, and I want to give you a hug.
Well-
Honestly, thank you so much.
Well, it's
You've
been
done a
fun.
fantastic good for tons and tons of people, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Well, the only thing I wonder is what would I done with my life if he hadn't have joined the cult?
It would have
often
been
think
different.
about that. I would have missed meeting some of the nicest darn people you ever knew, and I never would have met them.
I hear you.
And if anybody would have come talking about it, I would have said, "You got to be nuts. That doesn't happen in our country."
Yeah, right.
I
Mhm,
would
that's
have
true.
been as strong against anybody even thinking this could
Mhm.
happen.
I hear you.
Well, the hard way to learn is to have a kid join. And, maybe they could have done something with Mike. Mike was always, my youngest, he was always a renegade. He was hard to get to, he was wild, and there wasn't much you could do with Michael. And finally, he married a girl from Germany. He went in the service, and he married this girl from Germany, nice lady. And I knew the minute he brought her home, it wouldn't last. I just
Because
knew.
of what?
Hmm?
Because of what?
Well, she just wasn't American. She was a German.
Oh.
And she was a real German. Nice lady, but true German. And He lived with her, oh, I don't know how long. Anyway, they had one boy who is a handsome brute. He's about 6'2", and the nicest kid. He's never married. He's 42, not gay. He's worked for Toyota for years in the office down. He's transferred him to Virginia. He lives in Arlington, I forget where it is in Virginia. And I hear from him. They write real often. They're real nice. He lives with his mother. And I wish he'd get married, but he just can't find a gal that he likes. That's all there is to it. He'll go with a gal a while and then he quits. And I said, well, maybe he's gay. No, he's not gay. He just can't find a woman that he wants to live with.
There you go.
So I think his mother is such a good cook has probably got him spoiled. I think he's afraid he won't get a decent cook if he gets married. But he's a nice guy and very handsome guy. I don't know, he's got a picture of him around here somewhere. That's him way up high up there.
There you go.
Yeah, that's
Well,
Peter.
thank you.
That's
Thank
Peter.
you for talking with us.
Hmm?
Thank you for talking with us.
Oh, well, I've talked long enough. That's the one thing that my dad said I was gifted with. He said, she'll never shut up.
Well, don't you agree, for people that are in, maybe lurking, maybe listening to you, that one of the best things they could do is now, because there is access to all this information, is go on the internet, look at both sides, compare the notes. Like I said to this guard a couple weeks ago, read the internet, read the data, and then look at your group. Just look at them, watch them.
Yeah.
And then, you know what I mean? Read the tech. And
Yeah.
read that what people are saying, and then look at your group and see.
Yeah.
You know, there's an old Chinese saying, "Watch where the feet go."
Well,
It's a
that's
very
true.
good
It is.
thing.
That's a
Like,
good
where are
thing.
their feet going? They talk about we're clearing the planet, but where are their feet? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, the thing I feel so bad about, I've known several kids that were in and got out, and I never met a one that wasn't a nice person. You know, they don't attract crap down on the Skid Row somewhere, or you'd like to have them pick up somebody and help them, or at least get them sober, but they don't mess with those people. They mess with the good people, and this is what
Because
really,
they have money.
really bugs me. It really bugs me.
Yeah, they're after either money or connection.
Yeah.
That's their thing.
Well, Ronnie always could make money.
Right.
He's had 2 or 3 good businesses, and I don't even know what he does now. I guess he's retired. I don't know. He lives with some old broad that he met down in, I don't know where he met her in the Gulf.
Oh.
See, he went in right into the org downtown, and I didn't take very good to this, and I raised so much hell they threw him out. And the gal he'd connected with had to stay in. So it took her months before she could get out. And I just sat here laughing my full head off, saying, well, at least she's not out. But of course, he was just really furious with me. He wanted to be in there and doing his thing just like the real troopers
Important
were.
stuff.
Yeah. I said, well, you just picked the wrong mother, because I wasn't going to sit on my butt and listen to you wasting your life in this place, which might not even watch your health. Now, see, he's been on dialysis since 1990, and if he'd have been down there, he'd be dead. They
Yeah.
would never have taken care of him like that.
No.
He got cancer of the, let's see, I don't know, it was kidney, it must be kidney or bladder. He got bladder cancer, and way back in 89 or 90, and he kept putting it off, and he went to Clearwater to get cured about 3 times. And finally, somebody just took him into the hospital. I guess he was beyond the stage of taking care of himself, and that's when he went on dialysis. Well, he's been on dialysis since 1990, and he was going 3 days a week, but now I think he goes 5. And it's a shame, because Ron was a good kid. He's always just a blessing to know. smarter than a whip. And it's just a shame that society lost a good guy. You know, this is, I figure when they get in there, they're lost to normal society. And nobody wants anybody to cop out. For our
Right.
society, you know, they need good workers.
Yeah,
they
they
need
do.
good people. They know people. They need people who know have sense enough to look to who they vote for. So, but you know, whatever you get, my dad always said, don't sit around whining. Do something.
Right. Well, you've done it.
And I just never forgot that.
Well, thank goodness.
I figured if he had guts enough to ride a bicycle from Atlantic City clear to San Francisco or to LA, and then stop and get married on the way, there must be something strong there somewhere.
That's a ride.
Yeah. Dad was awful sharp. He was a smart guy. But he was a joker. He liked to have fun. I mean, I never ever heard of him taking a drink. He never smoked. And he would go to the Salvation Army about once a month, and he'd buy kids' shoes, underwear, shirts, and he'd pick out 2 or 3 people in town that had 8 or 9 kids, and the folks owned a couple apartment houses in the city, and he would go and drop them off and say, oh, some people moved out and left these things in the apartment. Maybe you folks could use them.
Aw,
I hate to
that's so
throw them out. He
sweet.
says, I hate to throw them away. Maybe you could use them.
Ah,
He did that forever.
that is very cool.
And both of us kids, we always said we had one long arm, because when you went to school, at least 2 days a week, you were taking milk or food or something to a couple of old people that lived in town, and you dropped it off on the way to school. So we all kidded about the right arm must be a little bit longer than the other, because we were always carrying something. We were always carrying something to somebody. But the folks were they were very good people. They were just sharp, and they just were really pretty good people. My mother had tuberculosis when she was young, and they put her in a sanitarium down in Iowa, and she got cured. And after she come home, she had this formula that they had used at the sanitarium to cure that cured her.
Wow.
So she fixed a room off the house, a sunroom. And us kids were never allowed in there. But she would hear somebody young that was tubercular, and she'd bring them out, and
help.
she would treat them. And it usually took about 2 months. And she had 7 different people over the years that she took care of, and every single one of them lived. Every single one of them.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And it was, well, just the way she was. Ma was a pretty sharp old gal.
Well, so are you.
So are you. We see where you get the good
I
talk.
talk too much. That's my
No,
problem.
no, not true.
You get me started, you can't shut me up. You might just as well know it.
Well, thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
you know, when life gets pretty dull when you're old. And, you know, you don't have anybody chasing you anymore or nothing. And it gets pretty dry. So sometimes when I go to bed at night, I thank Ronnie. I thought, by God, you brought something into my life that kept me going, whether I liked it or not, whether I
Truly.
wanted it or not.
Truly.
So I can't really be angry with him.
Yeah, and you have, I know I've said it before, but you've helped a lot.
Well, I
of
try.
people.
And I've always left the door open. If anybody wants to run away from over there at Gold, they're always welcome to come here.
And she has snickerdoodles too.
Yes, that's true.
Good.
Well, Tabby Anyon, he was going to come here.
Really?
Yeah, but he backed out. I forget how he left over there.
Didn't he leave the Indians? They were on the Indian reservation, and he left in. I thought I heard that he was one of the ones that left under the hay. Like they tucked him under the hay, and they
Well, it might have
cut
been.
him off.
It might have been, but I was just so happy when I heard he left. I couldn't hardly
I know.
stand it.
His wife was Andreas had said to me, I don't think Scientologists are bad, they're just misinformed. And he recommended that I read things, and her article was the first thing I ever read that was like critical. And she said, ladies, if you're thinking of joining the Sea Org, which I was always thinking of going back in the Sea Org, and that's what got me crying for the 4 hours when I read about the enforced abortions.
Yeah.
And she had to go back to work the next day. And I couldn't stop crying. I thought, this is my group.
I mean, they just had a steady run going over to Riverside getting abortions. And what really peed me off is the people that were giving them never said anything. They never brought it up that here's this young woman coming in crying with us forcing to give her an abortion, and they never did anything. They never said a word about it.
Right.
Well,
yeah, I didn't know about it at all.
They should have been put in jail.
Totally.
I'm not kidding you. They should have been.
I agree.
Given the abortions for keeping their mouth shut.
Right.
That's what they should have got.
Right.
But it's well, you know, evil. What was it my grandfather used to say? Don't worry, baby. Evil will out. That was one of the big things that he would say. Don't worry. Evil will out.
What does that mean? Evil will
Well,
out?
it means bad things will come to light, and people will know about it.
Oh, okay.
And
I love Warrior's expression, sunshine disinfects.
Yeah, that's
love
true.
that.
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, I lived with my grandfather I lived with Grandma and Grandpa for 2 or 3 years. I went to country school, and nobody's ever lived till they go to country school in Nebraska, where everybody's German. They all spoke German all around my grandfather, but my grandfather. They used to get in the wildest arguments you ever heard. Hitler is no damn good. Hitler's saving our country, they'd say. And this was all these crowds that lived around them. Every single one of them come to Grandpa, and he'd fight with every single one of them. Watch it. He's no good. He's no good. I can hear Grandpa saying that. Well, I lived with them I went to country school for 2 years. And like I say, you never live till you went to country school, where the teacher gives me the long division because she don't know how to correct him. She took a few weeks of normal training at Wayne College, and she became a country school teacher. Wow. Well, hell, I worked her problems for all the time I was there. And the big German kids that come, you had to be 16 before you could get out of school, and they'd chase her around the outhouse every lunch. So I knew something bad was going on there, but I really didn't. I wasn't old enough to know what really was going on. So it was an experience, believe me. I learned more about life at that school.
The country school.
I come home one time and I told my grandfather, I was living with Grandma and Grandpa. I said, you know, Archie Schultz, he chased me and he was trying to take my pants off, Grandpa. Grandpa got the shotgun. And he walked right down to the Schultzes and he says, I'll kill the son of a bitch.
My daughter.
So he goes down and he gets a hold of Mr. Schultz. He says, you shape this damn kid up or he's not going to be around. Well, Grandpa had a whole big flock of strawberries.
Real ethics.
He had a couple acres of strawberries, and he used to hire people to pick the strawberries. He had to, you know, because and my brother, Grandpa had a Model T Ford 2-seater, and my brother John would put all these strawberries in these that he could get in this car, and he would take them to town and he would sell them. 10 cents a box. Well, he paid 5 cents a box to pick them. But Archie Schultz was not allowed on the farm to pick strawberry. So about 20 years later, I'm sitting in a little outhouse bar back East Vista, and I'd go visit, and they said, let's go over to Waterbury. We'll stop in this bar and have a couple drinks. So we went through the cornfield they drove through, and we get over to this bar in Waterbury, Nebraska, little outhouse thing, and they were having a luau. Well, it was all gone by the time we got there, but we stayed and we had a few beers. And while I'm sitting there, here comes Archie Schultz, the kid that lived down the street years ago. He come in and he looked back and he looked again and he went, because on the way home once, I took my dinner pail and it had a jar in it. And I went like this and went across his forehead and I just split him wide open.
Ouch.
So he comes in the door of this bar and he looks back and he looked again and he looked again. He went like that. He come back and sat down. We had a real good laugh about it. He says, "Damn," he says, "I thought you were going to kill me." I said, "That was my intention."
I think you re-stimulated him.
It was my intention is what I was going to murder him. That was